It's time for No Pad Sports Talk. Stay tuned as two brothers bring you the latest from your Michigan teams and beyond in hockey, baseball, football, and more. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, JD and Steve.
Welcome back to a special episode of No Pad Sports Talk. I am your host, JD.
And I am Steve, and we're here to kind of recap the Tigers draft.
Yes. We should have a pretty good time. There's a little bit of controversy at the start, but we'll get into that in a second. But I just want to make a quick announcement for everybody out there. I'm not in my usual place recording, so I had to travel for work this week, so I'm in a hotel, if you can't see. So if you hear background noises, I'm in Alabama, so it's pretty warm, so the AC is running. I don't really have anywhere else to go to do this, so please forgive the background noise if you hear it. And I'm actually recording off my laptop's camera. Don't normally do that, so just be a little forgiving in this podcast. But we still wanted to bring this to you because we felt it was important to make a special episode to kind of recap the draft.
Hey, JD, and as you're getting closer to your mic, you're still sounding a little vibrating.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
All right.
I'd flip it back to where it was, or because that background noise wasn't all that bad. Sorry, everybody. No. We're fixing this on the fly. I thought about sending him a text message, but then he's gonna be looking down at his phone. We're just gonna do this on the fly. But
all right. So give me a second, then, everybody.
But yeah, so it is only Wednesday. We just talked to you guys and put that other episode out on Sunday. But last couple of days weren't too bad. I've been working out in the yard, which is why I got my yard clothes on. But got out and bought a 14-foot long, it goes up to 14 feet, pole saw, so I can cut some branches down, stuff that was touching my roof. So I've been a little bit busy trying to stay cool. So I work in the morning, and then when the sun starts to set and cools off, I go back out there. You can't really do that in Alabama where my brother is, so it's kind of hot from when you wake up and hot to when you go to bed. So
yeah.
Fortunately, he has one of those jobs where he works inside.
But I do have to work in 0-degree temperatures sometimes. So
it's a true statement. True statement.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like you got this big cushy job, but he only works like 3 weeks out of 10. So
yeah, something like that.
At least recently.
Yeah, at least recently. But I do want to point out new merch, right?
Yeah.
So you got that on.
Yep. And the hat too, you can see that there. It's got the logo on there. The T-shirts actually have the same logo, but obviously it's much larger.
Yeah. On the back.
Yeah. See, you can see it's got our big mugs. I think the guy who did them, really focused in. And JD and I have kind of large egos, so it was kind of appropriate that the heads are so big on the bodies. So
that works.
Yeah. But so let's like I said, it's only been a few days, but the draft started on Sunday, right? It was Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday.
Yeah.
Before we get too far, the home run derby, what'd you think? Did you watch it?
So I was at work, so I wasn't actually able to watch it. I just kind of watched the highlights from it, and saw some of the like Adley Rutschman, try and do the switch hitter home run from both sides, things like that.
Yeah.
So
when he did that was pretty cool because he was crushing them after he switched sides.
Yeah, and and Julio Rodriguez, bashing out some more too before he got beat. But
Yeah. Who was
yeah,
that
so
guy? Who's the guy that hit 41 in the one round? Isn't he the guy that won it last year?
Soto? Soto won it last year.
Rodriguez. Who's the guy he went up against? Was it Rodriguez?
Julio Rodriguez, yeah.
Julio Rodriguez hit 41 homers in the opening round. So,
I think that was a record, wasn't it?
it was.
Yeah.
41, and then, after that, you got to wear your body out, right? But
Yeah.
yeah. So I didn't watch it, so I don't know if he actually had to go out and he went first, or if he went second, right? So I can't imagine he went second and still kept hitting homers, right? Because that's just energy that you're burning for the later rounds. So I'm assuming he went first and put up a 41, and the guy in his round, he's like, "What are you gonna do with that?" Right?
Yeah. And he was going against Pete Alonso, and Pete Alonso has won it a couple times already too.
Yes.
So.
Yep. So Pete Alonso probably just looked at him and was like, "Okay, I'll go out here and put up 25, and that'll be what I'm. That's gonna be it." But yeah, no, the home run derby was pretty cool. It's obviously it's a lot different than our home run derby from when we were kids.
Oh yeah,
It's had a few different iterations over the last 30 years. So, but yeah, I like the round, the bracket thing, right?
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
I think it provides people with adequate rest between rounds, and then you got it just. I don't know. I like it. So.
Yeah,
yeah. And then the NL win the All-Star game, right? So, and for the first time since 2012. So, it's been a long time for the NL. And then they get home field advantage for the World Series this year. So, who knows? Anything can happen now, right?
Right.
But so yeah, that's my quick recap of what happened. Because while the draft was happening, all of this was also happening, right? The
Yeah.
All-Star game and the home run derby, and so JD asked me before we got on here, like, was there anything else we wanted to talk about? And I said no, and I lied.
Yeah, he lied. Threw me a curveball. Threw me a curveball in the home run derby. That's what he did.
Yeah. Well, that's only one out. It's only one out.
Well,
anyway.
for you, I mean, then I got thrown a curveball for being in a hotel and changing my mic settings. So
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
This is why this is fun. This is why this is what two brothers do. Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of a quick recap on that stuff. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about some other things as the week goes on when we come into Sunday. But let's talk Tigers draft, JD. You mentioned earlier that there was I don't know if it's controversy. I'm gonna call it Lions-esque, I guess. Maybe not quite Lions-esque.
I wouldn't call it Lions-esque. No.
But by picking like Jahmyr Gibbs, no one expected that. Yeah, whatever. You did. Yeah, you did. But the reason I say it is because they took Max Clark with their first pick, and
Right.
they had Pittsburgh took Skeens, right? That's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
And you actually said that in our podcast that you thought that was a possibility because of the offensive lineup that they already had. That you thought if they took a bat that, where are they going to play this guy, right? So you said that you thought that they'd take Skeens, and they did. And then that left Dylan Cruz, and Paul Langford.
Well, Langford, but no, not Paul. But that's fine.
It's not Paul, but Langford. Anyway,
Langford.
And Langford, both of them were both available at number 2, and then Dylan Cruz went 2. So that was actually the first time that I guess teammates went 1-2 in the draft. I think I saw that someplace.
Yeah.
And then that left Langford, right? Who, some podcast that we were listening to, one of the guys was like, Paul, I'm going to keep calling him Paul, but if Langford was available, it wouldn't be a bad pick, right?
Right.
He's got a good bat, and he can play in the outfield. But I think you said something about you wouldn't be surprised if they took Max Clark, and that's who the Tigers took at number 1.
So I didn't really go into detail when I said that, and for those listening, if you want the receipts, go ahead and this is only our second video on YouTube, but you have to go back to our actual podcast and listen to it before we start doing video. But I said don't be surprised if it's Max Clark. Now, my way of thinking about that with the Tigers is I actually had kind of 3 reasons why I thought Max Clark was going to be an option for the Tigers, and not just an option, but I thought that it was even kind of likely. And the first is more than likely Dylan Cruz was going to be gone. I do believe if Dylan Cruz fell to the Tigers, they'd take Cruz. I do believe that.
And I think if they didn't and they went with a Max Clark, there would be a lot more uproar here in Detroit.
Cruz is special. So I do think they would have gone Cruz. So you have to think about this new regime too, not just the GM, but the people in charge of the draft. They came from Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay has a history of picking prep prospects, and prep prospects are always going to have the higher upside. Unless you get a generational talent like Dylan Cruz. I gotta make sure I say that, but.
Yep.
And then, and here's why, right? You have to get out of the first round. First round, things are a little bit different. But once you get out of the first round, prep prospects is where it's at, because these are the best players in high school. So more than likely, these best players in high school, if they do commit to college, they got to go to college for 3 years before they can re-enter the draft.
Right.
Once they re-enter the draft, these best high school players have the ability to be the best college players. The best college players will then be drafted in the first round. So you can get these prep prospects, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, etc., that could be future first-round picks. That's why it's always key to kind of fill your draft with prep prospects, especially after the first round. And then on top of that, the like last year, right? If you look at the draft last year, the last regime, all they did was drafted college players. Now, when you draft college players, especially those that could be a project, they're still going to be 2-3 years away from the majors. So now you're getting them at 21, 22 years old, 2 or 3 years away. They're 25 or 26 before they make their debut. They're already mid-20s. You get a prep prospect, they go through the system 2 or 3 years. They're 21, 22 before they make their debut. And plus they would have been a future first-round pick in theory. So prep prospects always have the higher upside, especially outside the first round. And then the third reason why I thought they might go Max Clark, aside from just a tendency, for that to happen, and I think there was Dylan Cruz or bust. That was my gut feeling. I thought it was Dylan Cruz or bust. Okay. Was he's already made it known that he'll take he'll take a slot less than what he got selected at to sign. So the Tigers would save some money. And before we get too far into it, as far as other draft picks, that's why they were able to get some guys that they did later on in the draft, because Max Clark is going to take less than his slot bonus. So, and he made that known ahead of time. So with all that stuff, combined, I thought Max Clark I had a pretty good feeling Max Clark would be the pick if Cruz was gone.
So in our last podcast, the video one that we did, you talked about the slot money and how that works.
Yep.
So if you wanted to kind of get a refresh on that, My question is, though, let's say Max Clark decides he wants to go to college.
He doesn't.
Okay. No, I like as a first-round pick. Do first-round pick if he's a prep player? He still has that option, right?
Sure, but then they'll get a compensation pick next year for losing Max Clark. The Tigers would.
Okay. So it's not like you had a pick and then you lost a player, right? So
no, it's
any
not
of
like
their
that at all.
is it like that with all their draft picks? Say any prep player?
No.
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 Okay.
No. It's possible that, if someone later on don't sign, they don't get those draft picks back. It's only the first round pick that's protected.
Okay. All right. So that. But I've been seeing, they have kind of compared this Max Clark kid. Now, for those of you who don't know, Max Clark, while the school he was playing for was in Indiana, right? He is from here, Farmington Hills, before he was playing in Indiana. So he's kind of a home kid. So it's kind of cool to see, the Tigers pick up somebody that's a Michigan native. I don't know. I think it's cool for his family, like people he's played with, cause they'd be able to see that. But I don't know.
So, after Max Clark was drafted, I started doing my due diligence and looking for as much stuff on Max Clark as I could find.
Yeah.
That was so. This one scout, who's pretty. Let me rephrase that. An ex-scout who now does, publications and stuff like that. What he had to say about Max Clark, I'll give his name if I remembered it, but I was in my car and listening, and so I wasn't able to write it down or anything, so forgive me, but this guy ended up saying that there's two things about Max Clark. One is he wants to be the best baseball player ever, and he wants to win. So that's not bad things about Max Clark, right? Like, he wants to be the best baseball player ever, and he wants to win. And the guy says he works hard at it. It's not like he puts anything off. He regularly works towards becoming the best, and he just has this drive to want to win. I think any competitive athlete, they want to win.
Yeah.
And then he also then went on to say that the guy's an asshole on the field. Like, which I can kind of relate to in some ways, because I was kind of an asshole catching a lot of the times, with the players trying to throw him off or whatever. But, he's just kind of, he's an asshole in a competitive way. He's cocky, talks trash, just that kind of stuff. And so the guy made it known that he's not saying that in a negative way. It's just that's just the way he plays, cocky and talking trash, but off the field, great kid. Like, the guy couldn't say enough praise about him. There's lots of videos out there. In a small town there in Indiana, all the kids were up to him wanting autographs and stuff, and even his high school coach said that they got to have people kind of surrounding him, because after a while, like, the guy would just keep signing stuff for the kids and whatnot. And I believe the coach's words were he would sign everything until his hand fell off, right? So, and that's what this one guy said too, was that he's a good teammate, he's a good leader for his team, and he's a great person off the field. It's just on the field that competitive nature takes hold, and he's just kind of an asshole.
Well, and I guess that's not a bad thing because most competitors are going to be that way on the field, right? You can't be the nice guy out on the field and expect to do great things, I think, right? You have to go out there and say, I'm the greatest at whatever it is I'm doing. So you have to have that kind of mentality, I think, to be good.
Definitely, and let's just put something in perspective here. His last season in high school, He hit over 600, and his on-base percentage was over 800.
Yep.
Like, I'm
you
sorry,
sent me that.
but like,
yeah, batting average was 646, on-base percentage was 808, and you said that he has 52 walks, and that was in only 28 games.
yes, that's incredible, man. Like,
Yeah.
his plate discipline already, his approach at the game already when he's, so young. The guy is pretty polished. Now, he's so polished, in fact, and Max Clark wants to sign right away. This dude's a gamer, and that's what I really love about him. He's already said that he wants to sign immediately, and he wants to start playing tomorrow. So he wants to get his contract done. He wants to grab his gear, head down to the rookie league for the Tigers, and and according to the Tigers staff, their plan for Max Clark, because they expect him to kind of get out of the rookie league pretty quickly, is by the end of this year, he's already going to be an A-ball.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm telling you, man, like this guy, I love hearing him, right? Like, yeah, he's young, and
Well,
you can be put off by that attitude and the ego and all that kind of stuff. You can be turned off by all that.
That machismo.
But part of this process too. This process isn't just learning baseball and developing your game. That's not just all this does, right? It also prepares you to become a professional. And the coaches, if they see something they don't like about Max Clark, as far as like his attitude and the way he handles things, they're gonna help him get through that part and help him become a better professional too. But
Right.
but I like the fact that everyone has ever talked about Max Clark has always said that he's a leader and he's a good teammate.
Yep.
That says a lot.
One of the videos that you sent, I swear he talked about where he played basketball and football as well. So he was a
Yes, he
three-sport
did.
athlete in high school. So it wasn't just one of those things where he focused, 12 months a year on baseball, right? Which I like because when there are studies, because you're talking about overuse injuries, right? Because you're using the same muscles over and over again, right? So in football, he's an athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think based on what the stuff that you're saying, I like the fact that he's ready to go, right? He's not here to try and hold out. He knows what he's going to be making. This is going to be it. Get me down to the league. I want to be at the next level, and I want to step through these things in the next few years so that I can make my pro debut, right?
It's no, you're right, 100%. But going back to what you were saying about being a three-sport athlete, during the draft, they had the coach for LSU on, and for those that don't know, LSU won the World Series, right?
Yep.
So they had the coach on, and the coach even mentioned that he loves people that played multiple sports.
Yeah.
Because they are more of a well-rounded athlete,
Yep.
So
You actually hear that more and more from coaches all the time, right? When you're that good, if you're that kind of athlete, there's a position they can find you, right? They will get you on the field no matter what the sport is, or on the court, right? Because some of that stuff, there's things that can be taught, right?
yeah,
There are some things that can't be taught, and those multiple sport athletes, they stay in good physical condition, but yeah, I was looking. It looked like there was an article from the Freep. Did the title? I couldn't read it because I don't have a whatchamacallit subscription.
Yeah.
So I need to get one. But it talked about, is he the next Bryce Harper?
Well,
Did the Tigers
he's probably
just
the most.
draft the next Bryce Harper?
He's probably the most hyped high school player since Bryce Harper. That's for sure. And I think as far as Max Clark goes, he's not going to be a home run hitter. I don't think. The guy hits line drives. The guy hits the ball hard. He makes good contact, and he hits line drives. But this year in high school, he from what I read, again, this is not me watching him all the time, but from what I read, he actually changed his swing for his senior year, and he was actually getting the ball up in the air more, and that's why he had more home runs in his senior year than what he did the rest of his time there in varsity. So the guy changed his swing, hits the ball more in the air, and he's still, honestly, just a kid. He's going to fill out. He's going to grow. He has a pretty good frame at 6'1", and he's going to put on more muscle. So even though he's not going to be a home run hitter, he's not going to be a Langford, right, where Langford has a chance to hit 30, 40 bombs a year. He's not going to be that. He could be an 18 to 25 home run guy and just make good, solid contact consistently. And personally, and this is just, again, my personal opinion when it comes to baseball, I think that's where the game is going. I think the game's going away from more of these home run hitters because, yeah, you can change the game with one swing of the bat with a home run hitter. Absolutely, 100%. But you want consistency. So what is more consistent than a guy that gets on base, 40 to 50% of the time?
Exactly.
Right? So that's where the game's going, in my opinion.
And you're talking about Max Clark's frame. I mean, the kid's already 190 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So he's not that he's a small guy. It's not like he's 6'1" and 165 pounds, right? He's 6'1" and 190 pounds, and you put on another 10 pounds of good muscle and have him right about 200 pounds, and he's going to be crushing the ball, right? That little bit of extra power, that little bit of extra meat on his bones, that's all that's going to do, right? Because Wyatt Langford is his name, not Paul. Sorry, guys. I apologize. But Wyatt Langford, he's 225, 220, right, at 6'1". So, yeah, he's got a little more body. You're talking about how he's going to hit, some more dingers. But, okay, it doesn't need to be that way. Right? And then I know we're talking about Max Clark a lot and talking about this number one pick. But my question is not just because of the tendency for the front office because of where they came from about picking prep players, but
right.
What was, like, I guess I'm looking at Wyatt Langford's stuff now. I mean, he had two fairly consistent years back to back.
Yes.
So it was 2022, 2023. That was my thing that I was kind of looking at was like, what was Langford like one of those, he had one good year, right?
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, I'm looking at him now. He's 355, 373, was his batting average for the last 2 years at Florida. But I just, those are some of the things that I think that people don't think about when it comes to drafting players, right? Oh, this big hype player, and that's the guy that everybody seems to want. But was he a one-year wonder?
Well, I think the whole hype on Langford came from, podcasters and sports writers and all this stuff basically saying, this is the pick, this is the pick, this is the pick. And when you get that drilled in your head, someone that, for say an average fan or whatever, that may not go through the draft process or may not have all the information or whatever, and all of a sudden they don't pick that guy that everyone's saying they should pick or that is the pick. They're immediately thinking, oh my God, like this is Ella Vila all over again, like picking the wrong players,
Yeah.
And they immediately think, again, because it's a high school player, that they're in for like another 5 to 6 year rebuild. And that's, again, I don't think that's the case either. I think that with, again, Max Clark, and we'll get to Kevin McGonigal in a second, their pick there in the competitive round after the first round there. But
we'll call him 1B.
I think what we're looking at with those two players is they are probably the two, if not the two best, the top two of the top three best high school position players in this draft. And McGonigal is probably one of the best pure hitters in this draft, period.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at why they passed on Langford. I think it's because the upside of Max Clark, because Max Clark can stick in center field. Not that Riley Green is a bad center fielder, but could you imagine a center fielder with a true, or an outfield, defensive outfield, with a true center fielder in Max Clark, Riley Green and one of the other ones, right? And then you still got Matt Vierling, and I think Matt Vierling's a really good defensive outfielder, and he's pretty decent at the plate. He's not gonna be one of the best ever, but pretty decent. And I think that's a really good defensive outfield that has the chance to have really good plate appearances, right?
Yeah.
Because neither one of those three people, at least as far as we know from Max Clark, and I'm just going off what is his tendencies so far right now, but none of those three players chase bad pitches. They get walks. They're not sluggish on the base paths, and I think that the outfield is set once Max Clark gets promoted and gets into Detroit, because that's going to be an amazing defensive outfield with Riley Green and Clark specifically being able to provide some pop in their bats.
Yep. And so from my brother and I, we'd like to welcome Max Clark to the Tigers. We look forward to seeing you up here really soon and playing in America. So work hard, do your best. We'll see you soon.
And Max Clark, if by some chance you're watching this, send us a message. I'd love to be able to get you on the show.
Absolutely, we would. Absolutely. So let's talk about the competitive pick. So I talked about there's the first round pick, and then right after the first round they had, I think it was 6 teams got a competitive pick. So why did they get a competitive pick?
Good question. So there's technically 20 competitive they offer up to 20 competitive picks. 10 for being in the small. 10 of them are for the teams in the smallest markets. All right. So when you're in the smallest market, you're going to attract less fans. Less fans means less money. So therefore, you're not going to be able to like pay for free agents like say Boston or LA or Chicago, right? Yeah. So to try to keep the teams competitive, they give the smaller markets an extra draft pick potentially. And then after the smaller markets, it's all about revenue. So if you're one of the teams that took in the least amount of revenue, then you also get a competitive balance pick up to 10. Now a lot of times that crosses over, so the smallest markets also a least revenue team. So that's why you don't see 20 picks between A and B, right? So because you get 2 competitive balance rounds, you get one between rounds 1 and 2, and one between 2 and 3, and I think there was 16 picks this year. Yeah. So because there was 4 that overlapped.
Okay, so and I just look at it again. It's almost like because there's still technically like a round 1 pick. I guess they didn't get picked with. I look at it as a round 1 pick, as a guy who's not that knowledgeable, right? I would still see it as a round 1 pick. So do you see the Tigers pick staying at shortstop? Because that's what that's what he was listed as.
Right.
And what does that mean for your favorite player?
So here's what I want to point out real quick before we go down that road, all right?
Okay.
Also, to keep things competitive, there's not a salary cap in place, but there is what's called the luxury tax. And if you go over that set amount of money so many years in a row, it starts affecting your draft picks. So if you look specifically at the Dodgers and the Mets, they don't have a pick in the top 30. It's because they went over the luxury tax, I believe it was 3 years in a row. So right now their draft picks got dropped by 10. So New York should have had draft pick number 22, the Mets, but they had draft pick 32. And then the Dodgers had, was it the Dodgers? I think it was the Dodgers. They had pick 36, but it should have been 26. So because it got dropped down 10 for being over the luxury tax.
So were those did those fall into that competitive pick? Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Right.
yep, it fell into the competitive balance round.
Okay. All right.
So as far as McGonigal, will he stick it short? Right now, the thought process is no, he's not going to stick it short. He doesn't have the really good tools to stick it short, but they're going to definitely let him try at shortstop because what do you got to lose? They don't really have a good, in my opinion, a good all-around shortstop on the roster. So you might as well give this guy a shot.
Okay.
Like there's we got Colt Keith. I know but he's probably not going to be a shortstop. He's probably going to stick at third, and they even have a possibility at first. But then what do you do with Spencer Torkelson?
Well, that was what I was going to say.
One of them could move to DH.
Yep. Because who we have at second?
Well, Scope was your second baseman.
Okay.
Right? So now we don't really have a second baseman either. There's a person you drafted last year called Jace Young, who was slotted as being the potential replacement there at second base. But he's been really struggling this year. And I believe he's in just regular A-ball as well. But and he's one of those college players that was drafted last year by the last regime. And but he's kind of struggling this year. So now he's kind of went on a little bit of a hot streak just before the All-Star break.
Yep.
But it is what it is right now, and he's not showing he's capable of getting a promotion to even 2A. So what do you do with him right now? You can't really count on him as of now. So
yep.
But yeah, that's a possibility. But you still have like international signings that they got in their system, like Christian Santana.
Okay.
He's a possibility, but again, he hasn't really done much either to provide anybody with confidence that he's going to be able to even stick on a big league team. So, and the last person that you might want to think of as far as an infielder goes, outside Christian Santana, is a guy they picked up, Isaac Pacheco. He was drafted when they drafted Jackson Jobe. So when they didn't go with Marcelo Meyer or another shortstop in that draft, they drafted Jackson Jobe. They were able to save some money and then use that money on Isaac Pacheco. Pacheco is known to have a pretty good hit tool, and he was kind of like a shortstop, but he's been playing more of a third base, and he's in high A right now. But again, he's not really going to be a shortstop either. So you're kind of you just don't have one. We just don't have a good shortstop.
It sounds
to count
like
on.
you kind of have to try him out at shortstop because, based on what you're saying, there isn't anybody in the system that's a shortstop player, right? That can come up
Nope.
and actually play that and be a good, decent defender at that position.
Nope, not right now. But even the players that we were talking about have all kind of been struggling.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking at something I saw on, is it McGonigal? Is that how you say it?
yeah, McGonigal. Yep.
McGonigal, okay. It was on MLB's the draft coverage, right? They have a little blurb on here, and it says that the buzz around McGonigal that said he seemed unsignable, and that he would be heading to Auburn. Now, again, follow on with that was that they wouldn't have been taken that high if they thought he was going to go to Auburn, right? And miss out on that pick.
That's correct.
So, but they also said he might have to sign. They may give him over slot.
Yep.
And that they probably have to save some money. But you talked about how Max Clark might be taking some money under slot, where they just save some money to be able to get that player to pull and kind of tie those two people together for the future.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So, I everything I'm hearing right now is that the Tigers feel confident that they could sign their top picks. So,
Okay.
and you can go. I think you can go 5% over on your draft pick signings. I believe it's 5%. Of course, you get taxed for that some, but as long as you don't go over more than that, then it doesn't. You don't lose like draft picks or lose draft pick position. If you go over that additional 5%, then yeah, you do lose draft picks and draft pick position. So not only can they use some of that money from Max Clark that Max Clark saved them, but they can also bump it up a few percentage points with if they want to kind of go over their total pool of money.
Okay. All right. So McGonagall's a high school prep player, right?
Yep.
So again, you're talking about upside because of the age and the number of years you actually have to develop them within your own system. Correct?
That is correct, and then you can get them for a lower draft pick than normal because it's possible. Again, if McGonagall, let's say, did go to Auburn and just balled out, he's gonna be a top 3 pick, top 5 pick, top 10 pick. And if you don't have that draft pick, you miss out on him. But you get him here for pick number 37.
You're right.
So, it's value is what it is.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about day 2. Right?
Okay.
No. Yeah. Right. Day 2. Started with.
It's still day 1, but
it was still day 1. Round 2. Round 2.
Yeah.
We took a second baseman, Max Anderson, played at Nebraska.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's 21. He was named Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 2021. So obviously he's played his 3 years because he was a freshman in 21. So he had his 3 years of college, is what made him eligible to be drafted, right? Because that's the deal.
Yeah.
At least 3 years of college. We kept hearing that he could hit. This is the Tiger scouting director, Mark Connor. All we kept hearing was he could hit. If you look at his stats and performance this year, it backs that up. So he hit .414 with 20 doubles, 2 triples, 21 home runs, 20 walks, 29 strikeouts in 57 games over the last year. Posting a career high 1.232 ops. And
so
it sounds like he's a little bit versatile. He also played third base, second base, and first base in his 3-year college career.
Now, I say Max Clark because it's Max Anderson, but
yeah.
So this guy has good bat-to-ball skills. All right, he's not going to be a power hitter by any means. He was probably a bit overdrafted here, and I think that is going to be an attempt to try to get him to sign for less money than slot again.
Yep.
You know, because he was ranked number 91. You know,
okay.
Yeah. So, but he's not going to be a big home run hitter. But what he's going to be is he's going to walk, get on base, and have some good base hits. That's where his strength's going to come in at. And his fielding, even though he played multiple positions, his fielding again isn't that strong. So he'll probably stay at second, if anywhere, just because of that.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe that's why he was moving around, trying to find out a good position for him defensively.
That's my guess
for the team. Yeah. First base is tough, right? Like it's not just something you can you can pick that up. Everyone, you're just sort of standing on the bag. You're not doing all right. But there's really more to playing first base than that, right? So the fact that
there is.
I like that he has some versatility, I guess. Like if you have an injury thing, right, and you got to have to fill a spot, he has the ability to play those other positions. So that's great for him. His last year, 20 doubles and 2 triples. So he had 22 extra base hits, right? That's not including the 21 home runs.
Yeah, I guess that's my biggest problem with Max Clark. Or gosh dang it, I keep saying that.
Anderson.
Max Anderson is between him and McGonigal, you kind of have two players without a position.
Yeah.
You know, and so they both might be suited more for, say, first base.
Yeah.
But you got Torkelson there, you know.
Right.
So, but I mean, look, you know, as our dad always said, you know, it's like if you can hit the ball, to find a place to play you.
Yeah.
And both these guys can, you know, put the bat in the ball.
Right.
You know, but we'll have to see exactly what Max Anderson is able to do, because again, we just don't know. But
Right.
His defense, I don't think is gonna wow anybody.
Yeah. So, okay. So that is round 2. That's Max
Yes.
Anderson. A college player, so he's already coming out there. He's a little more mature. You know, these are players that typically, I guess, because of their age and the experience that they have, tend to spend less time in the minors before they make their major league debut. Is that?
That's the idea, but yeah, of course, that's not always true. But that's
Okay.
that's the idea, though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so let's go to day 2, round 3. Got left-handed pitcher Paul Wilson, prep player out of Oregon, Lake Ridge
Yep.
High School.
Yep.
I swear this was a name you mentioned in our last episode. Is that true? I can't remember.
I don't remember for sure, but I if I didn't, I do like Paul Wilson as a prospect. But I just don't remember if I actually mentioned him or not.
So, how are prep pitchers? What's their? I guess that's the word I'm trying to say. Their upside, their opportunities to move up through the ranks as a pitcher. What's the success rate? That's what I'm looking for.
Success rate's always going to be low for just prospects in general. Even in you know, because as we mentioned in a previous episode, the percentages as far as prospects making it to the majors, you know, it's and it goes down percentage-wise every round. And so now you're talking about a third-round draft pick in Paul Wilson, and you know what's the percentage like that he's going to make it. And if you look at the overall percentage that a third-round draft pick makes it into the majors, you're talking like 40% or something. You know, but let's talk about Wilson specifically.
Okay.
What I like about Wilson is that his dad was a MLB player, Trevor Wilson.
Yep.
So he comes from, and a lot of times when you have that family stock, I guess you want to call it, right? Like,
Sure.
Those players tend to make it just because of the genes. So I'd give Paul Wilson a better chance than the 40% in order to make it into the majors. But really what he's going to have to come up with is two things. He's going to have to come up with more than likely a fourth pitch, and he's going to have to be a little better control. Not that his control is terrible.
Yeah.
It's just that he's more of a low to mid 90s fastball. Every now and then you can touch like you can get a little bit more, say 96, whatever. But
yeah, they were showing he's like a 94 to 97, but we'll call him mid 90s.
Yeah, but I can't even really say he's 94 to 97. I don't know. I think his consistently, he's probably a little bit lower than that, and the consistently, even though he can get up there a little bit more. But that's just, anyways. His curveball's pretty good, but yeah, you gotta be a little more consistent. And
sure. And I think that's any young pitcher, especially a prep pitcher. If you're good and have a decent 90-mile-an-hour fastball, most kids that age don't know how to handle that. So, stats get inflated because of that, right? It's after that when they start developing and they actually have that pitching coach and, that opportunity to grow and build on their pitching repertoire.
So what I like about him, though, is that consistency looks like it could build and get better with more consistent mechanics.
Okay.
So a lot of times, that's what it is with pitchers, right? You want that repetition, so it's all muscle memory. And I was watching a video from Trevor Bauer. Actually, either late last night or early this morning. And, Trevor Bauer was talking about his control issues he had when he was a young man. And he was talking about, like, either he could let up on his fastball and be more accurate and have better control, or he'd throw his fastball faster but not have the control. And for him, and I'm not saying this is for Paul Wilson, I'm just speaking from Trevor Bauer, who was in the majors and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah.
But he was talking about how his tendency was with his torso. So just a small tweak to how he handled his torso during the delivery helped him achieve both the velocity as well as the control. So if something's just a little bit off, you lose that control. And I know I bring him up all the time, but that's what we see a lot of times with Ohtani when he's struggling is there's just something a little bit off about his delivery. And it's like that with all pitchers. I'm just using him as an example because, he went through that stretch of some really bad outings. And when Ohtani went through that stretch of bad outings, he would literally get to the dugout and watch replays of him pitching that inning before to see what his mechanics look like and how he could adjust them.
Right.
Because unless you have to have an eye for it, right? That's why there's specific pitching coaches. And when you see that, it's easier for them to spot it. But so going back to Paul Wilson, that's what the pitching coach is going to have to focus on with him is just a more consistent delivery.
So, and this is not my next statement is not to say that Paul Wilson's going to be one of these two players, but even Nolan Ryan and Randy Johnson had control issues.
Yes.
Right. Could throw.
Yes.
Throw hard, right, but couldn't control them. And obviously two of the greatest pitchers, to play the game. But once they got that control under, figured out those mechanics, because that's what both of them actually talked about. That it was just about the mechanics of pitching, and that's how they were still able to throw hard and control what they were doing. Because it's great if you can throw a 102 mile an hour fastball, but if you're throwing it behind the batter, kind of defeats the purpose, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, so that was our round 3 pick. Round 4, third baseman Carson Rucker. I assume this is a prep player, unless it was like because it doesn't say high school. But Good Pasture Christian School out of Tennessee. So I didn't know if it was like a junior college player or if he was a prep player.
And he's a prep player. And what we're noticing, if you remember the podcast before, one of the things I mentioned and I was excited about was going to be this is a new, GM, draft crew, etc. And as this draft went on, we're going to see just what their tendency is as far as drafting players go. And one thing we've noticed when you look at all these players, because I'm going to say the same thing Rucker I said about some of the other players, positional players, non-pitchers, is that he has a pretty good hit tool. The thing with Rucker, though, is it's more of his raw power. It's not necessarily his bat-to-ball skills. It's just that when he does get a hold of one, he gets a hold of it, and his swing has a tendency to hit the ball in the air. Whereas Max Clark is more of a line drive hitter until he's changed his swing this year, right? It's more like line drive, line drive, line drive. Rucker's more of a I want to hit the ball in the air. And, of course, Rucker has a chance to hit more out in that scenario because of just the way his the ball comes off his bat. So Rucker actually has a brother that's in the majors. Well, he got drafted, I should say.
Okay.
And he got drafted in 2021 in the 7th round, and Rucker here, goes a bit earlier in the 4th. But again, he's a third baseman. He has a chance to stick at third because he has, I'd call it, an above-average arm. But again, all these players move around in minor leagues, so trying to find the best fit for him. So we don't know exactly where he's going to end up at, but again, it's not his defense why he got drafted. It's all about his raw power, and he's a pretty big dude at 6'2", 195.
Yeah. Okay, so round 5, we got a right-handed pitcher, Jaden Ham, Middle Tennessee State.
Yeah. So what I like about Ham is specifically that he's a younger college prospect, being only 20. He'll be 21 later on this year, but so you have a little bit more time with him than a normal college prospect that's 21, 22 coming out.
Right.
But he has a pretty good fastball that can be in the upper 90s. And he has a real slow curve. And yeah, that can catch some hitters off guard with that. So, but again,
he has a slow curveball.
Yeah.
So are you saying that it breaks late? Or
no, speed-wise, just velocity.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So his fastball is gonna, like I said, his fastball is gonna be like like 95 to 98.
Yep.
Whereas his curveball is gonna be somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s, right? Like it's a big change of pace, as far as a pitch goes.
It's almost like a yeah.
But his best pitch really is the curveball. It's because it does have some good break to it.
Right.
But right now it's hard to see him as a starter because one is control issues, and two it's that he hasn't developed a good, even a third pitch to go along with it. His even though he has a changeup, it's not that great. So I would have to say that they might try working him as a starter. But if he can't develop any more control or can't develop more than just those 2 pitches, then he's going to be a bullpen guy.
Okay. So let me ask this question because, I've been wanting to do that. What's the difference between a curveball and a slider?
Rotation and how it's thrown.
Okay.
A lot of times with a curveball, you can kind of control how a curveball breaks. There's what's called a sweeping curve, and that's more of a horizontal break, right? It kind of goes like this and just kind of runs away.
Okay.
It's whatever it runs the opposite side of the hand you're throwing it with, right?
Gotcha.
So from the perspective of the pitcher, it's going to run to their left if they're right-handed or right if they're left-handed. So a lot of right-handed pitchers like throwing it to right-handed hitters because instead of breaking towards them more in their wheelhouse, it's going to break away from them. Yeah, so is that your video there, Steve? It's coming through.
You can see me? What's going on with the video?
I can hear it.
Is there something on my...
Is that yours? Or is it mine?
It's
it's mine.
Okay. I'm like, I don't have anything playing, but...
I was like, I didn't think I did either, but... I was like, what's going on? But yeah.
Yeah, because I can't hear anything. I couldn't hear anything on my end.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely mine then. But at any rate, so... but that's all it really is
okay.
And then the slider, a lot of times sliders will have more of a... Sliders are thrown harder, so like if instead of like the 78, 80, 78 to 82, sliders will come in a little bit harder. Say if someone's throwing mid to upper 90s, it'll come in say somewhere between 86 and 90 miles an hour normally.
Okay.
And sliders will have more of a late break. A curveball, a lot of times you kind of see it kind of like sweeping in. Sliders a little bit more flat before it just has the late break to it. So
okay.
That's generally the difference.
Okay. Well, because when I see them, like they both have they're both a kind of a break. They're a breaking pitch, right?
Yes.
It just depends on what it looks like and the number of rotations. Correct. I guess that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's speed and breaking ability. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because I don't think I finished with the curveball. Sorry.
Yep.
Then you got the 12 to 6 curveball. So it's like a clock, right? 12 to 6. So that curveball drops, whereas the sweeper sweeps. So there's 2 types of curveballs, and really, and then you got the late break on the slider.
Okay.
Throwing harder.
All right. So there's that. Takes us to round 6. They took a catcher, Bennett Lee, out of Wake Forest.
Finally. I think I said in the podcast last time that I really expect them to pick some catchers. I even kind of expected more than one, because we don't really have any good catching prospects here and currently in their system. So, but yeah, I mean, Bennett Lee, he's just a catching prospect. It's I find him to be. He's a good defensive catcher, and he has a pretty good grasp of the game, and he's a smart guy. And that's all good things for a catcher to be, obviously. Yeah. And he caught at Wake Forest, and Wake Forest has a great pitching staff. And so he was kind of like, and he was the main catcher for Wake Forest. So all those things were all positives in his favor.
Right.
But no, he's not going to be anything elite, and
well, you've talked about how most catchers aren't great hitters, but
right.
You got to have a good you need a good catcher to control the defense, right? They're sending out the pitches. They got to know the batters. There's a lot that a catcher does that people they're like, oh, they're just standing back there catching. That's not just what they're doing, right?
No,
the pitcher's not just throwing whatever he wants to throw.
No, it's he's a lot of people compare the catcher to the quarterback, on an NFL team,
right.
And in a lot of ways it's true. The catcher, he calls the pitches. Let's try to have this guy. Let's let this guy low outside. And the pitch sequence. Pitch sequence is so important in order to confuse hitters. And that's the catcher, right? Yeah. And a lot of pitchers, if they'll trust the catcher a lot of the times, right? Like, hey, the catcher wants me to throw this, I'm going to go and throw this. Especially when they have that trust between each other. So, but yeah, it's not just that. You got to have a good game, and right now, unless they go to like robot umps, it's all about how you receive the ball from the pitcher, framing, all that stuff is also a technique. Yeah. You want to be able to get those calls on the outside corner. You want to be able to bring the ball up from low, to get the low calls. And it's something that he does, pretty decently. I'm not gonna say, he's fantastic at it, great at it, but he's okay at it. He's pretty good at it. It's not a minus for him.
Yeah, because like a 6th round pick, I think in that one we talked about, like the percentage of them making it to the majors. I mean, we're talking in the 30s. I think is what the 6th rounder was, right? Was it in the 20s? 20%.
I thought it was lower than 30s, but yeah.
But anyway, so that's the catcher. They did take one. We had. Now we're moving to the 7th round. We got a shortstop, John Peck from Pepperdine.
Yeah, Pepperdine University. Again, a younger guy for college. Excuse me. And so now we're getting kind of in the rounds where my knowledge of prospects just kind of is not as strong, right?
Right.
There's too many prospects to watch, too many to know. So this is kind of getting to the point where it's a little bit outside my knowledge area. So the only thing I can really say about him specifically is that he's got a good arm and he's a decent fielder. But I don't know much else. I know it's just that he's a pretty decent fielder.
Yep. So I'm looking at MLB, just kind of his bio. He had a breakout season his sophomore year in 2022. He hit 361, 417, 578, right?
Yeah.
And I guess they thought he was going to move up. If he had continued to hit like that, I guess they thought he was going to move up draft boards more, but he didn't. He struggled in his junior year a little bit. But again, they said he's an average runner, does have good defensive actions, and at least an above average arm. So I think you said that. So
yeah, so like basically now where we're at, all right, in this draft, it's what you're going to see being taken in these later rounds is going to be a lot of middle infield prospects, all right, catchers, and center fielders for position players. Because typically when you're in high school or in college, your best overall athletes are going to be catcher, shortstop, and center fielders. So typically if you're a catcher, shortstop, or center fielder, you can play multiple positions. Yeah. So if you look at the rest of their draft, even going into the third day, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a bunch of those players. Of course, mixed in with pitchers. You got to have pitchers.
Yep. And that's what. So, as we're moving into rounds 8, 9, and 10, I'm kind of going to just group these three together because they're all right-handed pitchers. Two college pitchers and one prep pitcher. Diaz was the prep pitcher. And then Hayden Menton and Andrew Sears out of Connecticut and Missouri, or the Missouri State and Connecticut for those two. But so like you said, they did pick a bunch of right at the end of that second day. They went straight pitching, and we talked about how the Tigers do a pretty good job of developing pitching talent in their system. Yep. So I guess that makes sense that they're, you always got to have more pitchers, right?
You do.
So
now what's going to be? Oh, sorry there, brother. But what's going to be interesting is some of these later draft picks in rounds 11 through 20. And why I say that is because again they're still drafting prep prospects. Now typically, like we said, they got a certain amount of bonus pool money that they can use to sign their prospects, but the only prospects in rounds 1 through 10 count against that bonus pool. The only time a prospect counts against that bonus pool after round 10 is if they sign for more than $150,000. I think that's the mark. I'm pretty sure it's maybe $250, but I think it's $150. And if they sign more than $150,000, then it does count against your bonus pool. Now, why I'm bringing this up is they drafted this big pitcher from Georgia. His name was Andrew Dunford. Now, again, this is outside my scope of knowledge. I don't have any, it's like some guy I researched or watched or any of that kind of stuff. But just looking at his profile and reading up what he's able to do currently, it's actually pretty exciting. The dude is 6'7", 235. And he can already at 18 years old max out at 96 miles per hour. But again, that's if he signs, right? Because if you don't want to count against your pool, you can only offer $150,000. Sometimes this is where you kind of take a flyer, hope you can convince the guy to come join your organization.
Right.
But this guy has the potential to be a pretty decent pitcher, just given his size and his ability already. Right. He's very raw. This would be a project, for sure. I'm not telling you he's going to be a Cy Young Award winner or anything, but again, just his profile and what it projects to be is pretty exciting for a draft pick that you're getting out, like, I don't know, the 14th round or whatever it is.
12th round, actually.
Oh, 12th round. Okay.
12th round. Yep.
But that's, to me, this is the time to kind of take flyers on players like that. Is like in, the later rounds.
How many pitchers are above 6'2", 6'3"? Is there a bunch?
Yes. Ever since the 90s, where Randy Johnson was kind of the outlier at 6'7" or whatever he was.
Right.
More and more pitchers are, I'd say, 6'3", 6'4", and above.
Okay.
It's kind of been more. Yeah. I mean, very few are now
when you
below
gave
6
his
feet.
height. Yeah, when you gave his height and weights to that, so I was like, the first person I thought about was Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm like, to be standing on a mound. How tall is the mound? The pitching mound?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I can't remember
how it is.
But to be 6'7", standing on that mound, the long reach. So he's probably got at least a 7-foot reach, because typically when you get that tall, that wingspan is huge, right? So if he's at 6'7", I would say he's got a close to a 7-foot wingspan. So by the time he's actually releasing the ball, I mean, he's already that much closer to the batter, which means the batter has that much less time to react, right?
Right.
So I could actually see, he's based on his size. I mean, it's ridiculous. So just quickly to kind of recap the first 10 rounds, the Tigers took 6 college players out of their 11 picks. So half of their top 10 rounds were prep players.
Yeah.
So it falls in line with what you were
college
saying.
to kind of offset that, right? You got to offset some of the extra money going in the preps.
Yes. Right. So you have that. Down in day 3, round 11, they had shortstop Jim Jarvis out of Alabama. We just talked about Andrew Dunford in round 12. He's the prep. And 13, they had outfielder Brett Callahan, St. Joseph's. Now, I'm not sure if it doesn't say high school, so I'm going to go college.
Yeah, he is a college prospect, yes.
Okay. Round 14, we had second baseman David Smith out of Connecticut. They did take another catcher. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say about David Smith real quick.
Yep.
What I like about David Smith, he's a switch hitter. So he's a smaller guy, though, doesn't have a lot of power, but he's a switch hitter. And again, when we're talking about what this regime is doing, you see that they're taking a lot of pitchers. There are a lot of power arms, right, throwing mid-90s and higher. And as far as like fielding prospects, the ones that they've taken are good bat-to-ball skills. It's not necessarily about the home run. They're going bat-to-ball skills. And this guy here, David Smith, is kind of one of those type of prospects. Good bat-to-ball skills, not a lot of raw power. And that's what I wanted to see, and that's why I just keep repeating it over and over again, is we see what this regime now has a tendency of doing in their first draft. Power arms, bat-to-ball skills.
Okay. They did take a second catcher in round 15. Brady Cernaukik. Connor State's a college in Oklahoma. They took a couple more pitchers. They took a lot of right-handed pitchers. Are there just not a lot of left-handed pitchers, or just not something that they took a left-handed pitcher in 17, but I think all of the other pitching that they took, other than Paul Wilson, they got 2 left-handed pitchers that they took in this draft. All the other pitching prospects were right-handed pitchers. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It really plays. I don't know. To me, it seems difficult at that point because now, I think most batters are probably right-handed. They're not switch hitters. They don't go both. I think we see less and less of that now than we used to, as far as switch hitters.
So, the one pitcher you're getting ready to talk about was Danya Evans, sorry. And again, big guy, 6'6", throws in the mid 90s as well. But what's interesting about him is his arm slot, right? He's more of a sidearm pitcher,
Okay.
not overhand, and so he does tend to have some control issues, but I remember I was actually watching some stuff when he was drafted, or shortly after he was drafted.
Right.
And anyway, I remember them saying something about how he can touch the ball, like when he grips the ball, his hands are so big, all of his fingers can like touch each other, and but yeah, and because of his arm slot, a lot of his breaking pitches, he gets a lot of swings and misses and breaking pitches due to where he released the ball from. So again, just an interesting prospect, something a little, tidbit information about him that I remember hearing about.
Okay. And then the left-handed pitcher we took in 17, Bradley Stewart out of Cooper City High School. And then third baseman Ethan Ferris, Cypress Woods High School, another prep player. Right-handed pitcher Blake Pivaroff is how I'm going to pronounce it.
Yeah,
Arizona State.
At Arizona State. Yeah.
And then finally in round 20 we have right-handed pitcher Jonathan Rogers out of Tulupo High School.
Yep, and again with those pitchers, mid-90s fastball, right? But something that was interesting about the Ethan Ferris that you mentioned earlier on in the 18th round is just that, again, good bat-to-ball skills. I know he was a prep prospect, but he's 6'5", 215, big-bodied, and the guy batted 477 his last year in high school. So
that's huge, right? Because what are the Tigers missing right now, right?
Offense, 100% offense.
It's offense, right?
Yeah.
And, offensively, 1, 2, you were talking about the number of hitters that they had, right? And I feel like that's what they were looking at. They were looking at players that could put the bat on the ball, because that's all. Our dad loved baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all he talked about that so much. He says it's about, and JD said it earlier, just putting the bat on the ball. If you can hit the ball, I can put you someplace, right? Because the only way to score runs is to get on base.
Yep. So like and again, like I said, I just think that's the way that baseball is going. They're looking for good contact guys. Like look at Luis Reyes. For the Marlins. There's a lot of talk about people like Aaron Judge and stuff like that. As far as his power.
Flashy.
Shohei Ohtani, right? Yeah, it's flashy. But you get on base, almost 50% of the time. That's so many chances your team has to get a run.
That's right.
So, and you put those together now, right? You put them together, 40%, 50%, et cetera, just over and over and over again throughout your entire lineup, and you're going to get around the bases. I know it's a lot of small ball. It might not be as exciting as home runs, but
World Series wins
are
still World Series wins, whether you whether you hit 1,000 home runs that year or 2. Right? Yep. So
and I do believe you got to have a mix, and I think we've seen that, right?
Yep.
They have some guys that they all got good bat-to-ball skills, but some guys just have a little bit more of a chance to put one out.
Yep, and you're looking at body types and size too, because that's going to make a difference. Right?
It does. Yeah.
So are you able to generate enough power to to hit it out?
And the last thing we got to really just kind of look for and wait for is, can the Tigers sign everyone? Because again, there's a lot of prep prospects between 11 and 20. Yep. Can they get signed? That's going to be important.
11 and 20. Let's see. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, half. So another 5 prep players in the 11 through 20 range.
Yeah.
So in those 10 rounds, we had half of them were prep players. So
so they'll have their choices then, right? Do I want to sign for $150,000, or do I want to go to college, have the college experience, get better, and then possibly get drafted in the first 3 rounds and improve how much money I make there?
So
everyone's different.
Well, think about this though, because of the name and likeness stuff. that college players can get now, right? I think that's going to change a lot of prep player signings for baseball. Because if you're talking, if you say $100,000, right, and let's say, for where they're currently slot 150, but they can go to college and get a name and likeness signing for $200,000, right?
Yep.
I mean, to me, you go to college, you improve your draft stock, and now you slide up into like round 1 or 2, where you're going to get paid a little bit more, and have a better opportunity to actually make the majors.
Potentially, but let's look at it this way.
Okay.
Let's look at it this way. What also comes with college?
Well, injuries, but
potential for injuries, but also schoolwork.
Yeah.
And and you have to keep your grades in order for you to be able to stay on the team. And there's going to be some people just aren't going to want. They just want to focus on ball, right? They want to go there. They want to lift their weights. They want to do batting practice. They want to take fielders, grounders. They want to work on their base running. They want to make sure they stretch. That's what they want to do. They want to be ball players, right? So I still think there's going to be some people that still may forego college just because they don't want to put the time in to keep their grades up, just to be able to play ball at the college level. Let me just be a professional right now.
All right. And that makes a lot of sense, right? I know how, on the football side, how that the NIL deals have changed where players have signed, right?
True. But I think baseball, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Football and basketball are way more high profile in college than baseball.
I agree. But, I mean, the potential is still there depending on who that prospect is and where they're at, right, and what market they're playing in. Specifically, let's say they get out there and they have a breakout season their freshman year, right, at that college level.
Yeah.
So that money might not be there initially, but, you get that breakout season and then you have 2 more good seasons after that. There are players who can make more money playing at college than they could through the minor league system when they initially sign where they're at.
Again, I agree with you that potential is there, but I think it's very limited to most players, only because, again, no one's household names, right? I mean, again, it's not high profile. You don't have the college basketball with the Final Four, right? You don't have the a college playoff or the college football playoff system, where you're talking about who's going to win the Heisman, right? So you got a lot more people that could have a chance at like in baseball. I think most people probably heard from Dylan Cruz in the last 2 months, right? When he's been probably the best player for 3 years. You know what I mean?
I got you.
So
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I think players think about that too now. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing.
Oh, for sure.
Because college, colleges can now offer that. Say, look, we have this deal with this company that we can do this. Right? But I don't know. I thought I'd throw that out there because it has changed. It's certainly changed the face of football. But I think it's changed the face of college sports. And I think it's for the good, right?
Yep.
Maybe it'll change college basketball, and we'll see less one and done players, right? Yeah. They're still going to be their one and dones. That's just how it's going to be, I think. But I think you might see less than that because now there might be an opportunity to make more money with their name and likeness.
Maybe. I don't know. A lot of those players that are one and done, they just want to be basketball players. That's and if they could, I think they'd try to enter the NBA from high school if they allowed it.
Well, some of those players, like the Twins, one of the guy that we got for the Pistons, he didn't go to college. He played in a G League.
Right.
Right. So
that's what they want to do.
right. There are basketball has offered other opportunities for them to go and play ball and just play ball, other than just having to go to college and be a one and done.
Which is what the minor league system is. Just play ball.
Right. And it is. It's just to play ball. So, but again, it's all about what the player wants, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad there's options, right? Because there's no one size fits all for everybody. So,
right.
You know, you got to have the options out there.
Some players might be thinking to themselves, look, you know, I could take the money, or I can go get a college education and have something to fall back on if I can't play baseball anymore.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And those are good conversations to have, especially with young people, right?
100%. Because don't disagree at all.
We're all not going to be Hall of Famers. Right?
Well, we're going to be Hall of Fame, brother.
We are. We're our own Hall of Fame. We're in the Justice Hall of Fame. So, but that's our recap on the Tigers draft. I got one more question for my brother. This is always when we talk about other drafts, I want you to give a grade.
Oh my God!
For looking at what we've done, based on what you know of our new regime and their tendencies, based on the players that they got. Half of them were prep players, half of them were college players. That's how it worked out. What do you think of that draft?
So before I talk about the Tigers, I want to say something real quick about the Rangers. I think the Rangers got extremely lucky with how the draft fell, because the Rangers are on the verge of competing for a World Series, and to be able to get a bat like Wyatt Langford at 4.
Yeah.
And him possibly being able to be on the roster as early as next year, and that roster is already full of hitters. Like, Rangers are big winners of how that fell, and I'm not even a Rangers fan at all, not even close. But I think the Rangers kind of won because of how the top 3 picks went. So, and Rangers are gonna be scary next year, just straight up scary, especially if they get like their pitchers back, like DeGrom and stuff. Just wow, forget about it. But okay, back to Tigers. So I do understand some of the detractors talking about Max Clark, because again, Wyatt Langford. Some people say if Max Clark becomes as good as Wyatt Langford, that's what we would want anyways, so why not just get Wyatt Langford? And I totally understand that reasoning. I can't really even argue against it, except for they wanted the possibility of someone better than Wyatt Langford at a cheaper cost. And that's where Max Clark comes in at, because Max Clark's a true center fielder where Langford is not. And so I understand both sides of that coin, right? I understand the fan side, I understand the Tiger side, and in some ways, maybe it's a big gamble, big gamble, because Langford's going to be a major league player, and he's going to probably stick around for 10, 15, 20 years, so that's who Max Clark's forever going to be compared to. So it's a big risk on the the GM and the draft people to do that. Yep. But I like it.
Yeah. I won't even ask for a letter grade, but like, do you like the direction that the team went with their picks overall?
Yes. This we all know. Like if you look at the prospects right now, the best prospects are getting ready to be promoted, right? John Henry Malloy, Colt Keith, Parker Meadows. Like, those are probably our top 3 prospects positionally, and they'll probably be on the Major League roster at some point this year. So when you look at what's behind them, I mean, we talked about some of them, like Jace Young, struggling. Christian Santana, struggling. And then a lot of the players that we drafted last year, all college players, a little bit older, they're struggling. So what do we really have in the system if Colt Keith, John Henry Malloy, and Parker Meadows all get promoted? It's bare. I mean, there's nothing in the cabinet anymore. So you have to have younger players that are able to develop in 2 or 3 years, like prep players, to come and make their appearance. And you have to have a mix of college players that might be able to, make their impact in 1 or 2 years. You have to have that mix. And last year, the regime did us dirty. I can't help it. That's the way I feel about it, by drafting all college prospects. Because that hurt us in the development cycle with any of the younger prospects being in our system right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but if I will do it for you. I'll give you a grade, and my grade will be an A-.
Okay. All right. I thought it was going to be lower. I thought you'd say like a B, B, B minus, but hey, yeah, that's not a bad draft. Like I said, it's the Tigers that went after players who can make contact with the ball.
Which they needed.
They went with young players, which we need in the system. They've got pitching prospects, a bunch of pitching prospects, right? And even a couple catching, right? Which, you talked about how the Tigers need that because they don't have, we don't have what we need on the team. So,
not even close.
So it's nice that, they went with needs. And tried to fill those with the best players that they thought they could get, based on.
Well, look at the top 2 picks. Like I said, you probably have the 2 of the 3 best high school bats that you just drafted.
Yep. 2
of the 3. Wow. I mean, to me that is incredible. 2 of the 3 best bats. And then, you went ahead and you got some college players. The college players, what are they known for? Batting the ball. May not be the home runs, but batting the ball, low strikeout numbers, get on base.
Yep.
So, I mean, to me, they just kind of, we might be looking at, hypothetically, I don't think this is going to happen, but if McGonigal and Clark both fizzle out and they get traded because they're not producing, and then, I mean, anything can happen, and yes, that can happen. I might be looking back, in 5 years and saying this is one of the worst drafts of all time for the Tigers, and it could happen. Right. But, but when you're looking at potential, and you're looking at, one thing I mentioned about Max Clark in the podcast where I predicted that he could go to the Tigers, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did, is I mentioned his swing specifically. And I said that his swing will play at the next level. Again, I looked at his swing this year. I don't look at his swings from previous years. I honestly didn't know he changed it till later on. So I just looked at his this swing this year, and it's a great swing. And I think that everything from my knowledge tells me that Max Clark is going to be an impact player, and I'm not one. I love home runs. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not one that says like home runs over everything else. I like line drive hitters. Give me a Tony Gwynn over a Cecil Fielder any day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's the way I'll kind of look at it. And so if Max Clark, not saying he will be, but if Max Clark sits there and hits 330 with 20 home runs every year, like, the dude's a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry, but I don't care. He's not hitting 50 bombs, 60 bombs a year. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for. Is high average, high on base, and low strikeouts. So, anyways, I kind of got off track a little bit, but the Tigers rolled the dice, going for high upside players, and I'm all for it. Let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is our show for today, everybody. As always, we appreciate you being out there listening, and those that are watching us. We appreciate that. And we look forward to talking with you again. We'll be back on Sunday with our regular episode. We'll try and keep it fresh and kind of go from there. So again,
and definitely let us know what you think about the show, and are we off base on some of the draft picks we're talking about? Do you really hate the Max Clark pick? Let us know. Let us know in the comments.
Yes. You don't hurt our feelings, right?
No. We probably said worse things to each other, so.
That's I'm gonna go just shake my head. Yes. So, but yeah. So everyone out there, enjoy your week. We'll talk to you guys real soon. Take care and thanks for listening.
No Pad Sports Talk out.
Thanks for listening to No Pad Sports Talk. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, help spread the word by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at No Pad Sports Talk.
Forgot the salute at the end.